My name is Jamie Mitchell. I'm a combat pilot for the United States Air Force call sign, Valkyrie. But on that humid afternoon at Travis Air Force Base, all my father saw was a grease-stained disappointment standing in the way of his spotlight. Family Day was always a circus, but for George Mitchell, it was a chance to perform. He thrived on crowds, titles, and being seen. He wasn't there to support me. He was there to parade his perfect son and remind anyone within earshot that his daughter never quite measured up. We were standing inside Hangar 4, surrounded by rows of visitors and a line of F-35s gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I was still in my flight suit sleeves, pushed up name patch crisp. But to my father, I was barely more than a tour guide. He placed a hand on my back and shoved not hard, not violent, but enough to make me stumble forward toward the jet, just enough to humiliate. "Go on," he said with a smile loud enough to turn heads. "Show your brother that plane you get to wipe down." He chuckled like it was a harmless joke, but the sting in his tone cut deep. My brother Ryan stood off to the side, arms folded, that smug look he wore so well curling across his lips. I straightened, swallowing the heat in my cheeks. I'd been here before dozens of times. Different words, same story. He called it teasing. I called it being erased in plain sight. As I turned toward the F-35, the sleeve of my flight suit slid back, revealing the tattoo on my inner wrist. A line of black ink, VK0931. It meant nothing to most. But across the hangar, a voice faltered mid-sentence. Colonel Brooks, the base operations commander, stopped cold. His eyes locked onto my wrist like it had burned itself into the air. "Valkyrie 0931, he said under his breath, almost reverent. A ripple passed through the space around us, silence chasing the echo of his voice. I felt the shift before I turned, felt the eyes. When I looked back, my father's face had lost all color. His smirk dyed confusion blooming in his eyes as his mouth opened, then closed without a word. For once, he was speechless. He had no idea what he'd just exposed. No clue what those letters meant in this world. But Colonel Brooks knew. Everyone watching now knew. And the man who had mocked me my entire life suddenly realized that maybe, just maybe, he'd been talking down to someone who didn't just fly jets, someone who owned the sky. It was supposed to be a family dinner, but like every Mitchell gathering, it turned into a stage for Ryan. He had just closed a minor deal for his tech startup, something about licensing software no one in the room actually understood. But that didn't stop my father from raising his glass like Ryan had just brokered peace in the Middle East. To Ryan, the future of this family, my father declared, his voice booming with pride. The table clinked their glasses and smiled like it was scripted. I sat there invisible as usual, chewing through another piece of overcooked salmon. I had just returned from an 11-week combat integration course, the kind of program where pilots either break or get reborn. I waited for a pause, a lull in the celebration, and when it came, I cleared my throat. I just finished my advanced certification at Nellis Weapons School. Before I could finish, my father reached across the table and patted my hand like I'd told him I'd passed a CPR class. "That's nice, dear. More wrenches to turn, I suppose." Then he turned to Uncle Derek and grinned. We call her our little grease monkey. It was meant to be charming, but I felt it like a slap across the face. I stared at my plate, my stomach turning to stone. I'd spent months learning to fly missions most people couldn't pronounce. I'd pushed my body past the point of blackout. And here I was again, reduced to an oil-stained mascot in my own house. It wasn't even the joke that hurt. It was how normal it felt. Like I should have expected it. Like I wasn't a combat pilot, I was just the punchline that let everyone else feel more successful. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just filed it away, another silent entry in a growing list of moments when I realized I was never really part of this family's story. Later that night, I found my mom alone in the kitchen. She was rinsing dishes in silence like she always did after one of Dad's performances. I stood there for a moment, waiting for her to say something. She didn't look up. She just sighed, soft and tired, like she was already preparing her apology. "You know how your father is," she said not unkindly. "He just doesn't understand your hobby." That word landed like a stone in my chest. Hobby. As if I were learning to knit not flying $100 million aircraft at Mach speeds. As if I hadn't earned every stripe on my sleeve with blood grit and sleepless hours in the cockpit. I didn't argue. Not with her. That was never a battle I could win. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to smooth things over, to make it all quiet again. That was her role. Keeping peace meant keeping me quiet. She dried her hands and gave me a weak smile. It's just easier to let him think what he wants. Then she turned back to her routine as if the conversation had ended. But for me, something else had just begun. I realized in that moment I wasn't just overlooked. I was being asked to disappear, to make myself small enough not to disrupt the illusion this family had built. The kitchen felt colder than before. The house is quieter than I remembered. And as I stood there, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't home. Not really. Not for someone like me. In the sky, everything sharpens. The chatter of home, the weight of old words, it all disappears the moment I strap in. The cockpit seals, the engine hums, and the world reduces to speed, math, and instinct. My helmet clicks into place. The HUD flickers green. Oxygen flows in measured breaths, and my fingers tighten around the throttle like it's an extension of my will. Up here, I'm not Jamie, I'm Valkyrie. This is where I come alive. No one calls me a grease monkey. No one pats my hand or jokes about my hobby. They call me when it matters. When the mission is stacked with risks. When the timing has to be perfect. Red flag training is the closest thing we have to war without bullets. You're dropped into a high-threat scenario with real aircraft, real systems, and real consequences. The simulated aggressors don't hold back. Neither do we. I banked left hard. 9 Gs press against me like a concrete slab crushing my chest. My G-suit inflates, squeezing my legs to keep blood in my brain. My vision narrows, my body screams. But I've trained for this. I grunt a deep, guttural push of air against gravity and pull the stick. The Raptor responds like it knows me. We climb flip angle for the perfect strike. My wingman calls out a high-aspect threat on my 6. I don't hesitate. I run a defensive roll-drop chaff swing back into the fight. My breath syncs with the rhythm of the machine. The world outside is a blur of vapor trails and radar pings. My mind is calm. My voice is steady. Fox 3. Missile simulated. Kill confirmed. Splash 1. It's not about glory. It's about control, precision, execution. The debrief later is dry and clinical, but when the lead instructor nods, I feel it. Respect, not the kind you ask for. The kind you earn at 9 Gs under fire or in a sky that doesn't care who your father is. No one here sees my last name. They see my kill ratio, my reaction time, my judgment. Up here, I'm not someone's daughter. I'm not a disappointment at the dinner table. I'm a combat asset with the highest mission success rate in the squadron. I'm exactly where I belong. And they know it. Every single one of them. After the Family Day fiasco, I didn't yell. I didn't storm out or throw accusations. I went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes people underestimate you. That's what he always did, underestimate me. It was time to use that, not as revenge, not as rage, but as a strategy. The kind of strategy that wins sorties. The kind that doesn't just prove a point, but leaves no room for doubt. The Air Force Ball was scheduled 6 weeks out. A formal event, protocol-driven, hierarchical, predictable. My father loved anything that smelled like prestige, and that made him vulnerable. I requested that a formal invitation be sent to him and my brother. Table 1, VIP seating, right next to the wing command staff and a visiting general from the Pentagon. I knew he wouldn't see it as me honoring him. He'd see it as the military recognizing him. That's all it took. The RSVP came within a day. Overeager, borderline smug. He was thrilled. I never mentioned the part about the awards presentation. I never mentioned I was being honored. I just waited. To make sure nothing would be left to chance, I booked a short meeting with Colonel Brooks's adjutant, a captain fresh out of the academy by the book to the bone. I didn't mention my family. I kept it professional. Sir, just confirming that the Pilot of the Year citation will include full qualifications. Especially weapons school, I asked. He checked the regulations, nodded. Absolutely. Advanced certifications are lead items. Always listed. That was it. The confirmation I needed. It wasn't emotion. It was execution. Clean, precise, locked in. Back in my quarters, I reviewed the layout of the ballroom, the lighting, the program schedule, the order of speakers. I wasn't obsessed. I was prepared. This wasn't about pride. It was about correction. The record was going to be set. Not through confrontation, not through raised voices or messy family drama, but on a stage built for merit, surrounded by uniforms and facts and silence. The mission wasn't to be seen. It was to be undeniable. The grand ballroom at Peterson Air Force Base didn't just look official. It felt sacred. Every inch of the room, from the polished floors to the rows of flags hanging in silence overhead, radiated discipline and history. Blue dress uniforms moved in quiet coordination. Rows of medals gleamed under soft light. Conversations were low, respectful. No one here raised their voice to be heard. The weight of rank filled the air in ways civilians never quite understand. I walked in ahead of them. My mess dress was perfect. Shoes, sharp insignia flawless. The black patch of weapons school stitched cleanly over my heart. As I crossed the room, heads nodded. Quiet, professional nods from people who had flown with me, debriefed with me, and trusted me. Then I saw them, my father and Ryan. They entered with a kind of swagger that belonged more at a gala than a military event. Ryan was in a slim-cut tuxedo, all sheen and shine. Dad wore his old boardroom smile, scanning the room like he was about to take over command. They looked completely out of place. Like they thought this was a country club dinner, not a room full of warriors. I watched my father lean in and whisper something to Ryan. They both chuckled. I could imagine the line. Probably something about the stiffness in the air. I didn't greet them, not right away. I let them find table 1 on their own. Let them read the placard with our names. I watched their confusion flicker when they realized they were seated with a 2-star general and the wing commander. My father's chest puffed up like he'd earned it. I sat down beside them. No shrinking, no apology in my posture. This was my world. And for once, they were visitors. The general shook my hand firmly. He knew exactly who I was. We exchanged words short and to the point. My father didn't follow the conversation. He just smiled, still convinced this whole setup was somehow about him. The orchestra began to play softly. A slow, instrumental version of the Air Force hymn. People rose for the flag, hand over heart, a unified silence blanketing the room. I stood tall eyes ahead. My father fidgeted, already bored. Ryan checked his watch. I looked around at the tables, at the stars on the shoulders, the battle streamers on the walls. I felt the gravity of the place settle in my spine. This wasn't noise, this was legacy. And for the first time, I wasn't pushing to belong. I already did. They were the ones out of orbit. I was the constant now, steady, locked in, ready. The lights dimmed as Colonel Brooks stepped up to the podium. The room fell into perfect silence, the kind that only comes when everyone knows something important is about to happen. He didn't speak right away. He let the room breathe. This year's final award, he said, is reserved for a pilot whose performance during Red Flag was nothing short of historic. 8 aggressor aircraft neutralized in a single sortie. A record. One achieved not through luck, but through mastery. My heart thudded once in my chest, then settled. I didn't look at my father. I didn't need to. I could feel him next to me, his energy shifting, that fidget of confusion, the faint tightening of breath. Colonel Brooks continued. This pilot is a graduate of the United States Air Force Weapons School, class leader, and certified tactical strategist. The room leaned in. The screens behind him lit up with a single patch, the black diamond with the lightning bolt. A ripple ran across the audience. Not applause, not yet, just recognition. Then came the call sign, Valkyrie 0931. I heard the breath leave my father's lungs. He didn't gasp, he didn't speak, he just stopped. Like his body had frozen mid-thought, like his brain refused to make the connection, but it was too late. Please join me in honoring Captain Jamie Mitchell. The spotlight snapped to me. The table stilled. I rose steady. Each step across the floor echoed like punctuation. No need to explain, no need to turn around. Behind me, my father's world unraveled in silence. In front of me, a ballroom full of warriors rose to their feet. They clapped, they nodded. Not because I was his daughter, but because I had earned my place here. This was never about proving him wrong. It was about showing everyone else I had always been right. 1 year later, I stood at the front of a briefing room at Nellis, the birthplace of the most elite pilots in the world. My nameplate was mounted on the podium. My patch wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a signal. Instructor. Weapons School. Valkyrie. Before me sat 20 pilots, the top 1%. Men and women who had flown farther, faster, riskier than most would ever understand. And yet, here they were, silent eyes forward, listening to me break down the tactical layers of a 5th-gen combat simulation. There were no glances, no raised brows, no hesitation in their trust. They didn't care if I wore earrings or mascara. They cared if I could teach them how to survive. And I could. We debriefed hard that day. I picked apart decisions, corrected angles, and rewound data like a surgeon. They pushed back when needed. But it was never personal. It was about sharpening steel. After the session, we stepped onto the flight line, Nevada sun baking the tarmac. I walked beside Captain Jin, 2 other instructors falling into step. We talked fuel loads, countermeasure software, and who owed whom a beer. This was my world now, a world where every word had weight because it was earned, not inherited. No one handed me a seat at this table. I took it. And they were glad I did. I didn't think about my father much anymore. Not in anger, not in longing. He simply wasn't part of the map I was charting now. Here, legacy isn't defined by last names or boardroom titles. It's defined by flight logs, grit, and how well you teach someone else to carry the weight of the sky. And in this world, I was exactly where I was meant to be. The message came in late, tucked between mission updates and weather advisories. The sender's name stopped me. George Mitchell. No subject line. Just his name, cold and clean like a signature on a memo. I opened it not out of hope, but curiosity. 3 words. I was wrong. No explanation, no apology. Just that. 10 years ago, those words would have cracked something open in me. I might have cried. I might have believed they meant something more than regret, but now they just felt like static. A sound from another life. I stared at the screen for a moment, then moved the email to a folder labeled Archive. I didn't delete it, but I didn't reply. That story had ended long before he realized it. Outside my office window, Raptors coasted into final approach. My monitor showed a live overlay of airspace coordination lines of movement, fuel estimates, and objectives. The real world. My world. I leaned back, breathing steady. His words didn't change my attitude. They didn't reroute my mission. They arrived too late, too empty, and too small. Some legacies are written in ink. Others are written in the sky. I didn't need his acknowledgement to be whole. I already was.